Hello, good evening. I hope you're having a great time in the biology series. Today is a little late in the day, in the evening. The days have become shorter, but the program hasn't become shorter. We have completed full 6 months. We started 21st of March with information and research data from modern medicine, Ayush system, and we got people, global experts across the world. And 6 months has been a long journey, but we are not tired. In fact, we are more enthused, more excited, and these students are running a great program. And this particular program, the biology series, is meant for the non-biologists. And of course, the others can join to revise their basic principles of biology. And the idea is to think cellular, think molecular, whatever work you do, you are in the Ayush clinics, you are in your health as frontline workers. We should look at molecular and the cellular aspect. In that context, we have speakers speaking on very fundamental, simple aspects. And then the commentator, we have the global experts to speak on that particular topic, sort of bring the applications of that simple topic to a bigger, broader level and how to scale that up at the global level, national level. And that's the idea. So I will not take much time. I just came in because my friend and acquaintance Yatrib came in. He's also my scuba mate. We went scuba in Sri Lanka very briefly. I will let Manjari to play the game further and let the audience listen to the two presentations. Thank you. Welcome both Yatrib, both Kanupriya.
Good evening, everyone. So today's talk is on DNA and RNA, about the structure, function, and how you are going to isolate it. So our speaker is Kanupriya, who has done her MSc in biochemistry from Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar. Currently, she is pursuing her PhD in Neuroscience Research Lab, PGIMER. Her research topic revolves around the analysis of cell survival and stem cell markers associated with mind-body technique practices. Along with her, today we are also joined by Dr. Yatrib Hathau. He is from School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Science of Binghamton University. And previously, he was a tenured associated professor at Children's National Health System and the George Washington University School of Medicine in Washington, D.C. Dr. Hathout is highly published, cited, and funded authority in proteomics studies applied to biomedical sciences and biomarker development. He has directed proteomic and biomarker course for multiple NIH center grants and program projects. Dr. Hathout has been working on the transitioning markers from bench to bedside for Duchenne muscular dystrophy and other neuromuscular diseases. He has also joined the Tick-Borne Illness Center at Binghamton to implement proteomics technologies and develop diagnostic and prognostic biomarkers for Lyme disease. His laboratory mainly focuses on the development and standardizing innovative mass spectroscopy and proteomics method for biomarker studies and for understanding molecular mechanism of disease. So hereby I welcome Kanupriya to start her presentation. Over to you, Kanupriya.
Thank you, ma'am. A very good evening to all. Today in this session of biology series, we'll be discussing about the structure and function of DNA and RNA and the principle of extraction of these molecules. So starting with what these molecules are basically nucleic acids. DNA is abbreviated as deoxyribose nucleic acid and RNA as ribose nucleic acid. The common definition of DNA is that it is a genetic material which is found in many living organisms, which include single-celled bacteria and multicellular organisms. And RNA is mostly involved in the cellular protein synthesis and its regulation. So these DNA and RNA, these are the biopolymers which are made up of a single monomeric unit, and the monomeric unit of these polymers is nucleotides. So a nucleotide is basically made up of three main components, which includes a nitrogenous base, and the nitrogenous bases are of two types, purines and pyrimidines. Purines basically are two-ringed structures, And there are two types of purines which are found in DNA. These are adenine and guanine. Pyrimidines, however, are single ring structure, and there are three types of pyrimidines which are found in DNA and RNA. In DNA, cytosine and thymine are present, and in case of RNA, uh, uh, at the place of thymine, uracil is there. The second component of DNA, this nucleotide, is pentose sugar, which is a 5-carbon sugar, and this sugar is actually varying between the two, since the two at the second carbon position of this ribose sugar, OH group is present in case of RNA, but this OH group is not present in the case of DNA. That is why DNA is known as deoxyribose nucleic acid, since it does not have this hydroxyl group at the 2 carbon position. The third component of these nucleotide is the phosphate group, which is attached to each nucleotide at the 5' carbon position. So this here we can see it contains a nitrogenous base, the pentose sugar, and a phosphate group. So this is the complete structure of a nucleotide. DNA is not a single nucleotide, it is a biopolymer. So polymer contains multiple monomeric units which are connected to each other. So the single monomeric unit is nucleotide, and the nucleotides are connected to each other with phospodiester linkage. So here we can see that this is a single nucleotide, and these nucleotides are basically stacked over each other, and this stacking is the two nucleotides are connected to each other with the phospodiester bond, linking at the 3' position, third carbon position of the pentose sugar, and the 5 carbon position of the adjacent pentose sugar. One thing to note is that the very first nucleotide of the DNA structure would be having a free phosphate group, since it does not have an adjacent nucleotide to form a phospodiester bond. And the last nucleotide will be having a free OH group, since it does not have a next nucleotide to form a phospodiester bond. That is why the DNA is always the DNA structure or RNA will always be having a free phosphate group at the initial site, and at the end it will be having a free hydroxyl group. So DNA is not just a single stranded molecule, it contains two strands which are alternate to each other. As we now know that DNA has a free a 5' phosphate group and 3' OH group. So it goes in the 5' to 3' direction. However, it is connected to another strand of DNA which is alternate to it. That is, it is in the 3' to 5' direction, and these two strands are connected to each other with the hydrogen bonding between the nitrogenous bases. So these nitrogenous bases are connected, like adenine is always connected with thymine. Adenine, which is a purine, as we discussed previously, it is connected to thymine by 2 hydrogen bonding, and cytosine is connected to guanine with 3 hydrogen bonds. In case of RNA, at the place of this thymine, uracil is there. So in this way, there is a formation of sugar phosphate backbone, and the two strands are connected with each other through these nitrogen bases. So now we know that there are 2 strands of DNA, but to accommodate, two strands of DNA, and these 2 strands are linked to each other. So one thing to note is that the total number of purines is always equal to the total number of pyrimidines in case of DNA, since a purine always pairs with a pyrimidine, as A always pairs with a T by 2 hydrogen bonding, 2 hydrogen bonds, and G always pairs with C with 3 hydrogen bonds. So DNA has to accommodate all these nucleotides in a double-stranded molecule, in a double-stranded structure. So to accommodate in a proper conformation, the DNA acquires a double helical structure like this. It twists around each other. It twists the 2 strands of DNA twists around each other and form a double helical structure like this. And in this double helical structure, there is a major groove and there is a minor groove with different angles, and the number of nitrogenous bases in each of these grooves is different. But this way, the DNA structure is more stable, and it can accommodate the nucleotides well, and it can also accommodate the proteins which have to bind to DNA for synthesis of RNA and the other procedures like replication. So DNA, now we know that what is the structure of DNA, and multiple nucleotides are stacked over each other. So this is not just the 100 nucleotides or 200 nucleotides which are to be accommodated inside the cell. These are actually around 3 billion base pairs which are accommodated inside the cell, and these 3 billion base pairs would be a very long and elongated structure, and this elongated DNA structure is to be wrapped, is present inside a single cell. So how is it accommodated inside the cell? In case of prokaryotes, like which are the simpler organisms, the DNA twists around each other to form a supercoiled structure like the telephone wire, in which the DNA structure twists, it overwinds and underwinds to form a supercoiled structure like this. In case of eukaryotes, which are more complex organisms, these are multicellular organisms also. So the DNA is present inside each of the cell, and inside each of the cell, the DNA is there in the nucleus. So here, if we can see that this is a cell and this is a nucleus, which is an organelle inside the cell, the DNA is wrapped around positively charged histone proteins, and these histones further form a club to form nucleosome structure, and these nucleosome further form condensed chromatin structure, and this chromatin ultimately leads to formation of chromosomes. So DNA is present inside the nucleus in the form of chromosomes. So why is DNA called as the genetic material? DNA is called as a genetic material since the sequence of nucleotides which DNA possesses, there are numerous numbers of permutations and combinations in which these 4 nucleotides, that is A, C, T, and G, can be accommodated in the DNA structure. So these sequence of nucleotide varies between different organisms. So that is why the sequence of these nucleotides will be different in humans. It will be different in case of another mammals and every other kind of organism. So this sequence of nucleotides actually defines the defines DNA as the genetic material of a organism. Since, as we have already discussed, in case of eukaryotes, the DNA is present inside the nucleus. And this DNA transcribes to form a mRNA, and then mRNA moves out of the cell to form proteins. And the formation of this mRNA is called as transcription process, and the formation of proteins from DNA is called as translation. In case of prokaryotes, which are simpler organisms, the whole process takes place inside the cytosol of the cell. As these are not more specialized cells. So now we know the DNA is present inside the nucleus in a very compact form, arranged in the form of chromosomes. But RNA, it is present in the cytosol after being transcribed from the DNA. It is a simpler molecule. It does not have 2 strands. The nucleotides are stacked over each other, as in case of DNA, but it is a single-stranded molecules. There are certain hydrogen bonding formed in the case of RNA, but in between the same strand, if it is folded, there is in the foldings of the RNA, there is certain hydrogen bonding, but it is not double-stranded molecule. RNA is actually involved in the process of synthesis of proteins. RNA basically codes for proteins through these sequence of nucleotides, which we will be discussing in the further slides. So DNA is of a single type. There are certain types of DNA, but depends upon the structure of DNA. But incompletely, DNA has a single function. But RNA is of certain types depending upon different functions. The types of RNA include mRNA, which is messenger RNA, tRNA, transfer RNA, ribosomal RNA, which is rRNA. Some other types of RNA are also there. Some important other types of RNA are siRNA and miRNA, which is small interfering RNA and microRNA. So mRNA is the most important RNA molecule, since this is the RNA molecule which codes for the proteins. The mRNA has protein coding sequence which contains multiple, in which the nucleotides are present. These nucleotides, in case of mRNA, are read in the form of codons. So each codon will have 3 nucleotides, and each codon codes for a single amino acid. For example, if an protein coding sequence if a protein coding sequence is containing approximately around 180 nucleotides, it will be having 60 codons, and it will code for for a protein having 60 amino acids. So the mRNA has an untranslated region at the 5' end and the 3' end, as we have already discussed about the 5' and the 3' ending of the in the structure of nucleic acids. In case of eukaryotes, the processing of mRNA is different as compared to prokaryotes, since in eukaryotes the mRNA is synthesized from the RNA is synthesized from the nucleus, and then it moves out of the cell. So there is a processing involved in mRNA, since there are certain non-coding regions also present in this structure of mRNA, which has to be removed in case of eukaryotes. The other type of RNA is tRNA. This is the smallest type of small RNA. This is called as a small RNA, and it has a clover leaf-like structure containing 5 arms. The two most important arms of this tRNA is anticodon arm and the acceptor arm. The anticodon arm has 3 nucleotides which are complementary to the codon sequence of the mRNA, and with these anticodon, the tRNA binds to mRNA, and specific to this codon sequence, there is a nucleotide attached at the acceptor RNA of tRNA. These we'll be discussing in more detail in the translation lecture of this biology series. The other type of RNA is rRNA, known as ribosomal RNA. It is the most abundant RNA which is present inside the cell. Approximately 80% of the total RNA is rRNA. It does not translate into proteins, though it is in a very large amount present inside the cell. It is the exact function of this type of RNA is not yet completely known, but it is somehow involved in the process of synthesis of protein through interaction with mRNA and tRNA. The other two types of RNA which are being commonly studied in research these days are siRNA and miRNA. These are two non-coding RNAs which are very small in size, typically around 20 to 30 nucleotides, and these are basically involved in RNA interference pathway. That is, they are involved in inhibiting the expression of certain genes in case of some diseases. So this type of RNA is these two RNAs are being studied in association with diseases, and to study how the cell reacts when a particular gene is inhibited. So the difference between the DNA and RNA is the structure. DNA consists of 2 strands which are arranged in a double helical manner. RNA has a single strand, which RNA is also shorter than DNA. The sugar in DNA is deoxyribose sugar, and RNA it contains ribose sugar. The base pairs in DNA are adenine and thymine, cytosine and guanine. In case of RNA, the base pairs are adenine and uracil, cytosine and guanine. DNA is present inside the nucleus in case of eukaryotes, and it is also present in another organelle of the cell, mitochondria. RNA is mostly present in the cytoplasm and the certain organelles in which RNA has its functions. DNA is the most stable molecule because of its structure, double-stranded structure arranged in a double helical manner. Also, it does not have the free hydroxyl group at the 2' position of the sugar, which RNA does have. That is why DNA is more stable, and RNA the hydroxyl group makes RNA more reactive to alkaline environment, and hence it is more prone to degradation. So after knowing the structure and function of DNA, so now we need to know that how these DNA and RNA are to be can be extracted from the cell. So these DNA and RNA, so starting with the extraction of DNA can be extracted from any kinds of cell. These can be culture cells, these can be animal tissue, these can be blood cells or human blood, animal blood. So as we know, the DNA is present inside the nucleus. So first we need to lyse the cell. That is, we need to open up the cell to expose the DNA from the cell. So we do the cell lysis by certain chemical or physical treatment. to expose all the components of the cell. Once the cell burst opens, it exposes the DNA, RNA, proteins, and lipids out of the cell. So we need to remove all these other components which are not required, and they may affect the purity of the DNA. So we remove these other components stepwise. So starting with the removal of membrane lipids, these membrane lipids can be removed with the help of detergents which act on these, and they degrade these membrane lipids. Then we do protease treatment, which degrade all the proteins inside the sample. And the proteins can be DNases also, which can degrade DNA. So to protect the DNA, we do protease treatment. Next, we remove the RNA contamination also from the cell. This RNA can be removed with the help of RNase treatment. So to further to make sure that that RNA contamination is not there inside the cell. Ultimately, we get a purified DNA. So though DNA is a sturdy structure, still certain precautions have to be taken while storing and handling of the DNA. Next is the extraction of RNA. As we know that RNA is a less stable structure and can be easily degraded. So while handling of the RNA, while isolation of the RNA, we need to be careful. We should be using RNase-free reagents. We should be using benches and glassware which are properly wiped with the RNase inactivator, so that the RNA from the sample is not destroyed or degraded. So discussing about the extraction of RNA from a cell, RNA again can be extracted from any kind of cells. So first, similar to the DNA, we have to lyse the cell. This lysis can be performed with any physical or chemical treatment. Once the cell is lysed, the solution will again be having RNA, protein, and DNA inside it. So now we need to separate RNA from other types of proteins and DNA. These are the contaminations. We can consider these are the contamination in our sample. So this we can do by phase separation, or certain other techniques are also there. So I'll be discussing about this technique. So this to separate RNA from other molecules, we do a phase separation in which chloroform is a chemical which separates the solution in 3 phases. The upper aqueous phase here contains RNA. The middle buffy coat layer contains DNA, and the lower part contains the protein. So we need to carefully remove the upper aqueous layer containing RNA into a new MCT or new Eppendorf tube. After isolating this, separating this upper aqueous layer, the sample has to be precipitated to separate RNA, and it has also to be treated with DNases at this point to remove any kind of DNA contamination with this. Since while separating the upper aqueous layer, it may take up some DNA from this buffy layer. So we need to do DNase treatment at this point. After this, after the DNase treatment, the sample is resuspended in the RNase-free solution, which can be TE or water. So storage of RNA samples at the initial phase, when we are collecting the samples for RNA isolation, if we have to store the RNA storage, the sample storage should be done very carefully in a proper reagent like RNA-later, in which inhibit the RNases inside the sample, and it has to be immediately stored at -70 or -80 so that the RNA is not degraded from the sample. So why do we study DNA? To as we know that DNA is a genetic material. To understand the genetic diseases, we do study DNA. To understand the development of diagnostics and drugs, we study DNA. And for carrying out forensic science studies and determining the paternity of the samples, we do DNA studies. And also we do DNA studies to identify new kinds of species like bacteria and viruses. If a new bacteria and virus is identified, it is identified through the genetic material. And in case of RNA tells us about how a cell performs its function, since RNA is involved in the protein synthesis, and proteins are the main machinery of the cell. So it tells about how the cell works, and it also tells about how a particular kind of intervention or a drug can affect a cell's functioning. So that is why we study RNA. So in conclusion, we can say that DNA provides us with the static picture of what a cell or organism might do or become, and RNA lets us see what a cell or organism is doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kanu. I would like to request to Dr. Hathout to please give his comments on your presentation.
Very good job, Kanu. You did great presentation. That's an excellent lecture. I like it. And it's also, I learned as well from you. You know, you are going to become a good teacher if you like that. Okay. So just a couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
I know you covered most of it, the DNA, RNA, double-stranded replication and transcription. So when you do replicate DNA replication, from which side to which side you read it, and from which side to which side you synthesize a new strand?
Sir, it is read in the direction from 5' to 3', and a new strand is also synthesized in the 5' to 3' direction.
Can you go back to the slide?
Yes.
And yeah, and explain it. DNA transcription. Yeah.
This one, sir?
Yeah. Okay. No, the other one. Next one. Can you go to? No, go this one. Yeah. Here you have your double-stranded DNA there, and you are going to make new DNA. You're going to replicate this. That means you are making new strands. So you are going to synthesize new strand for each part of this DNA. From where to where you start reading it, from which side to side?
Sir, the synthesis starts from 5' to 3' direction. Like this double two strands, they separate from each other by certain protein action. And once they are separated, the new nucleotides are added in the 5' to 3' direction.
Okay, so you are reading it from 3' to 5' then, and making a new strand from 5' to 3'.
No, sir, we do read it from 5' to 3'.
You read it from 5' to 3', and you make new strand from 3' to 5'. Okay, that's what you said. So it will be very tricky for a cell to do it for the two strands, because one strand is in the opposite direction.
Yes, sir.
Do you think how the cell does it? Do you think?
So actually, in case of replication, actually the synthesis is in the leading and the lagging strand. So,
exactly. Yeah, that's what I want you to say. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So there is a leading and a lagging strand.
Yes, sir.
And you have Okazaki fragments.
Yes, sir.
From one side. Perfect. Excellent.
Yes.
That's what I want to know. Okay. So that's great. Second question. We have 4 nucleotides. How many codons do you think the human body has? The genetic code?
Sir, there would be a number of, I cannot tell the exact number that how many codons would be there, but
roughly, just a quick calculation. Since you have
sir,
4,
if there are like 3 billion base pairs are identified in the human genome sequence, so but we also have introns in it.
It's okay. Just go back, think about it. You have 4 bases. You're going to do combination of these 4 bases, 3 codons. So how many codons you will have total? It's not a trick question. Think about it.
I think it's 64, sir.
Yes.
64. It's okay. No.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the genetic code is a 64 codon.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know you just did the presentation and you're thinking about, did I do good? It's okay. No worries. And How many start codons and how many stop codons we have?
We have 3 start codons and 3 stop codons.
Say it again.
AUG is 1 start codon, and
Exactly.
I think 2
start
or
codon,
3. Or 2 or 3.
Three.
It can, yes, sir.
3 stop codons, yes.
Yes, sir.
And 1 start codon. Would start codon in mammalians codes for what?
It does.
There is one
glutamic
amino acid.
The first amino acid that is added at the time of translation is methionine.
Exactly, methionine. All
Yes.
the time, every single protein
Yes,
starts with methionine, and it's processed. I think when you are going to do the translation, you will talk about it, right?
Yes, sir.
Who is going to do the talk on translation? You or another person?
So another person will be doing that.
Okay, good. So, do I have to ask more questions or?
No, it's okay, sir. It's okay. There is one question from the Facebook
Well,
for Kanupriya.
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
So the question is from Dr. Rahul Tyagi. What may be the possible assessments analysis with reference to DNA one can include in yoga-related study designs?
Can you unshare the slide so everybody can
Yes,
see
sir.
your face?
Okay. Okay.
In yoga based study designs, I think we
Sorry.
can do.
Sorry, Manjari, can you play the speaker view so everyone can see them clearly? Speaker view, on your right.
Maybe you can repeat the question.
Carry on, please.
So the question is how yoga-based intervention can be affecting the DNA. DNA's can affect at the DNA structure. So I think at the level of DNA, since epigenetic changes are changes which are induced by the lifestyle. So yoga is a way of lifestyle. So yoga might induce certain kind of epigenetic changes at the DNA level by methylation or acetylation, by increasing the and thus leading to increase in expression of certain proteins, or maybe it can induce some epigenetic changes, I think.
Okay. Thank you, Kanu. So I think if anybody else is having questions, they can ask right now.
Ma'am, I have a question. This is Sheetal. Can
Yes,
I
ma'am.
ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Kanu, I just wanted to ask the same slide where sir was asking about the A and T and G and C. So is it always that A is always attached to T and G is always attached to C? And in that slide, there was also that they were when they were attached in some, there was only attached two strands were attached, and in there was 3 were attached. So can you just explain me that?
Ma'am, I'll share the slide with you and then I'll discuss with the.
Yeah, thank you.
So one thing to note is in case of DNA, A always attaches with T. A is a purine and T is a thymine. So a purine always pairs with pyrimidines. So here we can see that adenine pairs with thymine and guanine always pairs with cytosine. Adenine and thymine are attached to each other with 2 hydrogen bonds, and guanine and cytosine always attaches to each other with 3 hydrogen bonds. So here in this double-stranded molecule, you can see that A and T are attached with 2 linkages. These are the hydrogen bond linkages, and in here G and C are attached to each other with 3 hydrogen bond linkages. Am I clear, ma'am?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Kanu, which DNA you think is more stable? GC
so B type. B type.
B type.
Yes.
Why do they call it a B type? If you go back to your slide, which one will be like the GC rich or TA rich?
Sir, GC rich. It will be GC rich.
Because?
So since there are 3 hydrogen bonds, so it will be a more stable structure. It forms a more stable. because of the 3 hydrogen bonds. So that is why it would be GC rich.
Good, good. Excellent. So when the DNA replicate or transcribe, it starts in the TA rich, the Tata box, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So can you tell me something about the promoters?
Sir, promoters are basically the sequences which are identified by the proteins which are involved in the synthesis of mRNAs and
Yeah. Are they part of the mRNA or?
Yes, they are part of mRNA.
Are you sure?
Yes, sir. They are part of the mRNA, but they are not part of the coding sequence.
Exactly. They are in the beginning of the gene, before
Yes,
the gene starts. Usually,
yes, sir.
it's the binding site of transcription factors. I don't think they are translated into the mRNA. I don't think they are transcribed into the mRNA. It just indicates where to start. And there is 5' capping of mRNA at
Yes,
that
sir.
site. Then you start transcription. So when you make new mRNA, just remember this, you can add them in your slide later.
Yes, sir.
When you make new mRNA, can you go back to the slide where you showed mRNA? Just one quick.
Yes, sir.
Put there before putting the mature mRNA. Next slide, where you make the
Yes.
mRNA. mRNA.
This one, sir?
No. When you make a mRNA from DNA.
This one, sir?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, go
Yes.
back up. All right, that one. What are, you see, you have that pre-mRNA. Can you explain? And then you have mRNA.
Yes, sir. In case of eukaryotes, the DNA is first transcribed into pre-mRNA, that is also called as heterogeneous RNA. It contains certain intron sequences, which are the non-coding sequences also. So these sequences has to be removed before the mRNA translates to proteins. So after the removal of those intron sequences from the heterogeneous RNA or pre-mRNA, it forms mature mRNA. So the intron sequences are removed with the help of spliceosome mechanism, which forms the mature mRNAs.
Perfect. So you are splicing off the intron.
Yes, sir.
So what do you think about the last nucleotide? For example, if you take the first exon there, the first exon, the last nucleotide on that exon and the nucleotide in the next exon, they are going to connect, right?
Yes, sir.
What we call that, if it creates a stop codon there in that splicing. Let's say you are making a protein or mRNA, but when you do splicing, it was an error and you create a stop codon just in the middle. What happened?
Well, I think this no protein will be synthesized or partial synthesis of protein, which will be not the complete functioning protein will be there.
Yes.
So,
the reason, and there is good genetic application, that's what they call frame shift mutation.
Yes.
If you have a frame shift mutation in DNA, and that's what happened in Duchenne. You have a deletion of one exon in the middle, 51 or 50. So exon 49 can now go in frame shift with exon 51. They call them frame shift mutation. So you won't make the protein.
yes.
And there are mutation in frame. Although you have deletion or some mutation in a codon, you have still the exon that you spliced off, still allow the exon before it and the exon after it to connect and still be in frame. You can look it up for Duchenne muscular dystrophy mutation if you want to put an example in there.
Yes.
Okay, so these are important, the genetic mutations that to determine if it's in frame or frame shift to develop proper, what they call personalized medicine
Yes, sir.
for treatments. So this has some application in future if you do it. And I don't know, for yoga, for the yoga thing you are studying, it's mostly epigenetic, I think.
Yes, sir. I do also.
It's
think.
not going to be mutation of the gene. It's an adaptation. How does epigenetic work? How do the body silence some gene expression and let other gene be expressed?
Actually, since DNA has a phosphate group, so it is negatively charged. So the DNA is wrapped around the positively charged histones. So there is certain acetylation or methylation. Methylation and acetylation are basically the epigenetic changes, which changes the expression of a particular gene. So methylation, which is positively charged, it will more compactly pack the DNA, which would lead to a lower expression of that particular gene. And acetylation does the opposite, which increases the expression of that particular gene. So in response to any kind of intervention, we can study that how intervention or any kind of drug also, or the lifestyle, if we are comparing some lifestyle or the environmental factor, we can see that if certain, if how this methylation and acetylation pattern is there in those individuals who are practicing those interventions.
Good. Thank you, Kanu.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kanu. And thank you, Dr. Yejri, for joining us and giving us opportunity to hear thoughts about this presentation. And tomorrow we'll again be meeting for another biology series talk, which will be on the basics of stem cells and its application by Dr. Saras Jyoti. So we'll be meeting at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Can I talk to Dr. Akshay Anand a little bit if he's still around?
Just a moment, just a moment.
We'll just